Welcome, guys. Welcome to the Indian Small Press Panel, Mid-OhioCon 2009, as we are closing out the show. I thank you for kind of taking a little time to visit with us today because we have an incredible group of Indian small press creators hand-picked to be on this panel. I personally hand-picked them. But my name is Chuck. I run a website called Comic Related, and we do a whole lot of Indian small press coverage, and the good folks at Mid-OhioCon asked me to kind of chair this panel and introduce you to the panelists, ask them a few questions, and give you a chance to talk, meet, and learn from some Indian small press creators, which is incredibly important because, just taking a second here, you know, the whole industry of comics is kind of going through change, whether it be the onslaught, oncoming of digital comics, or kind of the upheavals of what's going on with Marvel and DC, the changing benchmarks at Diamond. There are so many things that are going on right now that are beginning to kind of redefine the overall dynamic of comics. And it's much like what's happened in the music industry. We're seeing everything begin to open up more and more. 10 years ago, we were an industry that chiefly was, you know, Marvel and DC, Dark Horse, Image, and everybody was shooting to make it to that level. And there's more of a groundswell, in my opinion, today, and there's more room for new voices, new creativity, new imagination, and new stories to be told. It is an open field like no other, and Indian small press is the heart of what I see as the changing face of comics. So what used to be the proving grounds is now producing the superstars, like Terry Moore, Jeff Smith is just a few examples. And people who are on this panel are regional creators that are incredible, in my opinion, and I salute each of them and appreciate each of them for taking part in the panel. I'm not going to go through and explain who everybody is. I'm going to ask each one, starting with Eric right here, to kind of first of all just tell everyone who you are, what books you've kind of done up to this point, and then we'll come back with another round.
All right. I'm Eric Adams. I do a comic series called Lackluster World. Do a number of other small press or short stories, small press wise. I do a number of things in the comics industry. I do some help with comicrelated.com. And in a nutshell, that's me.
Well, that was short. I thought I had longer. All right, my name is Brant Fowler, and I write and letter a series called Wannabes. It's just to give you a brief description, it's about a bunch of people who think they're think they're superheroes with superpowers, but they're really not. I also letter a bunch of books for a bunch of different companies, including Image and Arcana and various others. I work with comicrelated.com. I work with Haven Distributors and Comics XP. I almost left that one out. So that's pretty much me.
I'm Lora Innes. I write a webcomic turned print, so I guess I'm part of the onslaught.
Absolutely.
It's called The Dreamer. I did a little bit of work for DC Comics, Vertigo, American Splendor last year.
My name is Bob Corby, and I'm actually better known for doing other things than actually producing comics. I do publish the O-Comics every year here at Mid-OhioCon. This would be our 21st year here, and this is only issue 18 though, so you do the math. Anyhow, I also run the Small Press and Alternative Comics Expo here in town, and do some of my own indie stuff. So.
Just that? All right. I'm Comfort Love.
And I'm Adam Withers. And we write, draw, color, letter, and produce The Uniques, an independent superhero book.
I'm Dustin Carson. I've been exhibiting just a little over a year now. I did a book called No Gods, 6 issues about a 14-year-old boy that thinks he's a clone of Jesus Christ sent to destroy all superheroes.
So, each of you kind of came into the industry and you are a part of it. And I know, just kind of running down the line a little bit, Dustin is kind of a new voice within comics. Adam and Comfort produced this incredibly well-produced series that is just knocks it out of the ballpark. I describe it as Teen Titans if it were done for HBO. It's Teen Titans the way Teen Titans should be, but it's the Uniques and it's awesome. But they are, they're people who are doing this full time as part of the comic industry. Bob is just an incredible part of the tradition and history of independent small press here in the Columbus area, and Space is an incredible, incredible show, and it's such a forum.
I'm the small and small press.
Yeah, well, Lora wouldn't toot her own horn, but that series did run through IDW Publishing, so she's making quite a name, certainly. And Brant's image lettering and doing everything in his brother 24/7, and Eric is just plain professional. So anyway, so how did each of you get into independent small comics? What drove you to create your first book? What drew you into comics, and what drew you into creating? And let's start with Dustin, since we started this last time.
I've always read comics since I was a little kid, and as I went through college and did the English thing, I thought I wanted to be a novelist and a short story writer. And my friends and I, at the age of 30 plus, were still playing, the Dungeons and Dragons dice games. And one of those dice games was Marvel Superheroes. And we were playing that, and my wife saw how hard I was working on this just for 4 friends. And she said, "Why haven't you ever written a comic?" And the rest is history. So props to my wife.
We got started doing our own book because we didn't have a choice anymore. We kept trying to beat down the doors of the big real publishers for a long time and kept hearing the same things over and over. We love your work, we like your style, it's really neat, it's really fun, but I don't know what to do with it.
Exactly.
So we
I don't know. It looks great, but it's not for this generation.
So we decided we'd show them what to do with it and do it ourselves. You can't get any attention unless you're published, and if nobody will publish you,
Right.
do it yourself.
But to be honest, this has really been the best decision that we've ever made, and there's even a part of us that even if the big guys did come knocking on the door, I don't know if I'd really want to do that anymore, because the fulfillingness of doing our own book, telling our own series, making comics the way we want to make comics, it's been so fantastic that to go and do something that in the long run really wouldn't matter that much to me, it's not that exciting.
You betcha.
There you go.
I started actually getting published in a small comic called Just Imagine Comics and Stories out of the Chicago area. Did a strip called Firefang for a number of issues. And then Just Imagine got eaten up in the big black and white comic glut of the 80s and kind of disappeared. And at that point I got a little disillusioned with having people publish my work, and found out about the Small Press Network, where there was a lot of independent creators out there not really worrying about being paid or making money doing comics, just doing comics for the love of it. And I got kind of involved with that through Tim Corrigan's Small Press Comics Explosion from back then. And I've just been going ever since. Started doing Comics at Mid-OhioCon here back in 1988 and been doing it ever since. And then in recent years, actually 10 years ago, started the Small Press and Alternative Comics Expo here in Columbus, just to kind of push forward that thing and then give these guys some, a stage where they could be, we won't have to wait for Ray Park to leave to get a conference room. So.
I had wanted to do comics my whole life and kind of dabbled in it while I was working as a commercial illustrator, and I was never happy with any of the work that I did, and none of it wound up ever being published in just various companies that were kind of upstarting or whatever. None of it ever went through and got published, which in retrospect is a good thing, because I really don't want it to ever surface. It's really bad.
You are not alone. We've all been there.
But the problem was that I was drawing all day, and then I came home and the last thing I wanted to do was draw. So I really shelved my dream for probably 5 or 6 years after art school. And then things changed, and I started freelancing from home instead of being a full-time illustrator. So in between projects, I kind of have free time, and just kind of felt like maybe I'll give comics a shot again. And so through a series of events. And initially I was trying to break it into the industry and all of that. I got a little bit of work from DC, but nothing that would ever pay for more than like 2 months of my car payment. And so just kind of figured, you know, I could be trying to tell someone else's story, but I'm a storyteller. So what's the story I want to tell? So that's how this came out.
Like everybody else, I was always interested in comics my whole life, pretty much. When I was younger, I actually wanted to be a comic artist, and I would draw all the time. And about age 19, I kind of got out of comics for a while, and when I got back into it, I fell in love with writing, and realized also that my art just was not good enough to be published. So I kind of shifted my focus and went the whole submission route, went to various companies and stuff, you know, got the number of rejection letters we all got. And Marvel actually reopened Epic, which was a creator-owned division, and I started coming up with an idea for that, and that's how Wannabes was born. And I just kind of fell in love with creating my own stuff, and I started seeking out more indie stuff and reading more of that. And you know, from then on, I've just been pretty much working on my own stuff, and you know, the lettering thing I just kind of fell into, and that's kind of what pays the bills while I try to, you know, make my stuff and get it out there. So.
Well, unlike everybody else, I didn't discover comics till much later in life. I mean, I guess I knew what they were, of course. It's not like I was ignorant to their existence, but I was maybe 22 or 23 before the world had really been opened up to me. And at that point, I'd always kind of been an illustrator on the side, working as a graphic designer full-time. And I had been looking at going into filmmaking, and when I discovered comics, I realized that this kind of is filmmaking just on paper. You know, it doesn't have sound, it's visual storytelling. And I saw this as maybe a gateway to getting into filmmaking. And since then, it's been 5 years, and I don't really have as much interest in film as I did then. I'm not looking to use comics as a stepping stone so much anymore. I'll stay here for a while. I guess that's it.
So how many people in the audience are comic creators or want to be comic creators in some facet of the industry? Just a show of hands. Pretty wide berth across the audience. As you know, I thanks to Mid-Ohio-Con, I had the ability to handpick creators whose work I love. Looking down the panel as people that I respect as comic creators, looking out to these individuals, open this up to anybody, what advice would you give to people who are in the audience who are thinking about creating that comic? Not necessarily how to succeed, we'll get to that question in a minute, but how to go, what do they need to think about that maybe they're not thinking about?
Money.
That was my first thing too. Not, you know, let's get the discouraging, uninspiring stuff out of the way first. Get as much money together as you possibly can, because just to buy a table, you know, you're looking $200. That's just for the table. You haven't paid for the art, the inking, the coloring. Get as much cash together as you can. That's the discouraging part.
It depends on where you're going and what you want to do and what skills you have. You may be just a writer, you may be just an artist, but the other thing that a lot of people don't see in front of them is some of the tools that are available to you on the internet. For instance, you know, we're in the middle of doing another comic series that relates to the Uniques. We're getting a whole lot of amazingly talented artists on this. You know where they come from? They come from DeviantArt. DeviantArt is I see some nods in the crowd here. It's an amazing set of talented people that aren't just in your own local area, because your own local area is hard to sometimes find other talented people. You know, Columbus might have 5 or 6 guys, and you go through those guys, and those guys may or may not work. But when you're going through the country, the world, there's a lot to pick from. And there's also a lot of people who are hungry to do something with you. The key is for you, especially if you're a writer, is to make sure you have solid stuff. If you've got lackluster things that you haven't really worked on very hard, that you're kind of trying to make work, you know what? Shut up and don't talk until you are confident that that is a good product. Because you don't want that artist to waste their time on something that you're only okay with. We've done things like that. You know what? That's why we do our own book, because I didn't want to work with any other writers who were like, yeah, I'm totally into this. And then we get done with the project and they were like, well, you know, I felt really strong about it when I started, but now I don't care so much. So, you know, whatever. So you, as the writer, make sure it's awesome. And then also you artists who want to do comics as a thing, when you get your chance, don't half-ass it.
Well, I'd say work. People, they mention money, and that's number one, the cost. And you have to either be willing to front a lot of money or be willing to live incredibly frugally, which is easier and easier to do as you get used to it.
The more you're
you
like,
don't need
oh,
as much
I
as
don't
you
have
think you
that
do.
much, okay.
The second thing, the number two, is work. You have to work, you have to work, you have to work. There is a vast difference between being into comics as a hobby and being into comics as a profession. A lot of people like to doodle in their sketchbook. A lot of people even like to sit down and make pinups. And there's a lot of people who are really good at making nice pinups. But there are not a lot of people that have the gift, the work ethic, or the determination to be storytellers. It's a very different skill set, and it requires an incredible amount of effort. And if you haven't yet started, if you want to do comics, but you haven't yet done any pages that you've drawn, or even more than a handful of
Or
pages
even
that
as
you've
a
drawn,
writer, if you haven't written a script.
start.
It's time to
Do
start.
the work. You know, do the work now before you're trying to sell yourself. Do the work now before you're relying on it. Do the work now before you need the money. When you've got the time to mess around, to make the mistakes that everybody's going to make, so that when you go out to try and be a professional, you look professional and you feel confident in your professionalism. But you have to learn, you have to teach yourself right now to be able to put in the grueling grind of daily work as an artist or a writer.
I can kind of jump on the bandwagon there. I've been around longer than most of these people here and been to a lot of conventions and seen a lot of wannabe artists who have a couple sketches and this plot for a graphic novel. And there's probably some of them out here, and I'm along there with you. So I always say the first thing to do, okay, there are a lot of publications out there that are looking for material. Do a 4-page story, do an 8-page story. Just put it together. Put it together, prove to people that you can do that. And you're gonna practice on somebody else's dime then. That's probably the best advice I could give you.
I think something you mentioned that you need to be confident in your work. I think one of the problems with so many first-time creators coming out is they don't know how to be confident about it. They don't know when it's done. So I think it's very important to have connections with people who do know what they're doing. And even if they're not good friends, you know, there's so many people at this convention you can walk up to, show them your stuff, and they'll give you an honest critique of it. Get people to give you feedback. And when you feel like you're finally getting the right amount of feedback and that people are telling you this is good to be published, then go for it. But if you have that self-confidence that you feel, so of course go with it. Also, I agree with you, you need to work hard, of course, but I think it's really important to be resourceful and not just throw money at conventions all the time. Find creative ways to sell your product or promote your product. You can find free advertising space online, take advantage of it. Don't think you have to buy a big $1,000 ad on newsarama.com or something like that. Find conventions where you can partner up at a table with someone else. See if anyone will offer you a free table, or find the conventions that might be smaller and might not have as many people that come in and walk past, but their table price might be $25 as opposed to $300. So I guess, to be cliche, think smarter, not harder, but work harder.
You might also want to think about what else does this comic apply to. Find a different audience than just the comic audience. I'm working on a project now that might link into something from my hometown, and you know, maybe there's a sale there or two based on that. Also, there was something else you said. I'm trying to remember.
Confidence.
Confidence. Well, yeah, confidence. There are, at least in Columbus, I know, and I know they're all over the place, there are a lot of collectives, local cartoonists that band together and kind of give each other critiques. I belong to the Sunday Comics group here in town. We meet up at the Crimson Cup up in Clintonville every Wednesday night, and I think I don't get to the actual Sunday meeting, which is like the third Sunday of every month. Also, there's another group called Panel, I know, and there's other ones I'm not even aware of here, but I've heard of a few other ones outside of town going on. I think down your end there's
Lexington Comic Creators Group. There's a Nashville one. There's a couple different ones that are regional to the area.
The guys in that group are across the board, people doing professional work to people like me who just kind of hang around with the mini comic stuff. So
I've got one more thing I want to say, and just that I think always imagine that the worst case scenario is likely. Because that way you don't come to a convention thinking, oh, I'm sure to sell $1,000 worth of books, because you're not. You're going to sell $50 worth of books or $200 worth of books.
And your first couple of shows, you're not going to sell any books. Last year at Mid-Ohio, my second con ever, I sold one book. So
it takes a long time.
You got to let people see you, because the same people that walk this con are the same people that walk Space, are the same people that walk Gin.
A little difference.
A little difference, but if they see you at shows, they may not take a chance on you at this show. But when they see you at the next show, oh, I remember him from Mid-Ohio, and they'll come up and take a chance on their
The more you do, the more you look like a real person who actually exists. And the more real you look, the more serious they'll take you. Conventions are an invaluable resource, both having a table and just going yourself before while you're getting yourself ready to have a table. You mentioned portfolio reviews. I've got a degree in illustration. But I learned more about how to do comics by getting my portfolio reviewed from people at tables at conventions than I learned in 5 years at art school. I'm not saying that the art school didn't teach me a lot, but it didn't teach me a thing about comics. Next to sitting down with the people who did this professionally and having them look at my work because they knew what they were looking at. And don't be afraid to talk to people. Don't ever feel like, oh, he's too big or oh, he's too small. Definitely don't think he's too small. Just because they don't have a name you recognize, do you like their work? Are they doing something that impresses you? Are they doing something you would like to do? Ask them how they do it. And for the most part, I can speak for myself, and I know I can speak for a lot of other people. I wish that I had people I could have talked to when I was trying to figure this out, instead of having to spend years making mistakes and sort of slowly putting one foot in front
There
of
was
the other.
so much hit or miss that we had to go through to try and figure out where we are. And we've come from, doing one con a year, bringing it up to 3 to 5 to, 7, 10, 15, and now we're at 20 conventions a year. And when I'm speaking to, someone brought up about going to different places, we harp on this all the time. Don't discount those anime shows, guys.
Yeah, anime
Because
shows have been huge.
that's comics too. You might be like, oh, but they're so different. You know what? It's all storytelling. All of it.
Comics is comics. And it goes back to there's no name too small. It's all just comics. Any preconceived notions you have, any biases you have, get rid of them. Lose them. Because the only thing that they're going to hurt is you.
Right.
The only thing they're going to hold back is you.
Everything is worth a try when you're trying to get to that new audience. Because I'll tell you another thing. This audience here, by and large, that's here at this place, they've made their decisions on what they love. They're already in love with Superman and Spider-Man, and their hearts belong to them. So it's very hard to get them to go for something new. And that's in part too, look at the age, and it's maybe offensive or something to bring this up, but your average age is 35 and above at this show. And at 35 years old, not always, but a lot of times you made your decision. If you go to one of those anime shows, those shows have a lot of people who haven't made up their minds about the only thing they like. They're still interested in a variety of things.
I have a friend who makes a killing at craft shows. He takes his comics and does his art at craft shows.
You never know.
You never know until you try. I was sitting in on the panel in San Diego, and they made the comment that it was a small and independent press panel, much like this one. And they said, if you're new to this, and this is your first book, and this may be your greatest thing ever you're wanting to share with the world, be prepared to knit for the first 2 years. Because it's going to be just quiet. It's perseverance, I think. It's a willingness to stick this out and be here again and again. And if you're an artist, it's that, they asked in a Marvel panel, what's the best way to become a marble artist? They said, draw and never stop drawing. Draw 24/7. Draw until you can't draw.
And the same goes for writing. If
Yeah.
you want to be a writer,
Absolutely.
write every day. It doesn't have to be a comic book. It can just be your journal.
Right.
Write every day. You don't have to write for 6 hours, but every day write something.
And I would say pick something that you're passionate about. I think everyone's kind of been saying about hit on it, just how much work it really is, not just to create comic books, but independent comic books, because there's so much more on your shoulders. You're not working for someone who's giving you a script and then they're going to color it and letter it and distribute it and market it and all of that. I mean, you're everyone, or you're most of those people. And so you're with this thing all of the time, and it lives or it dies on your shoulders. And if you don't believe in it, if you don't love it, if you don't want to spend more time with it than you spend with your husband and your mom and your friends and your TV and your hobbies and everything else that you thought that you love to do, it will eat up your life if you really want it to succeed. And so I would say pick something that you're like crazy in love with, that you can not only manage to spend that much time about it, but you still think about it first when you wake up in the morning, and you can't fall asleep at night because you're running through it in your head. And if you can find a story that you're that excited about, then that's a good thing, I think, because you really have to believe in it, and you really have to be able to sell it to other people. I mean, if someone comes up to your booth at a convention and they're like, what's your book about? You're kind of sheepish and you kind of ramble for 2 minutes, and they're just kind of waiting for you to stop so they can leave. I say it in like 2 sentences. Like, my book's about a high school girl who dreams about the Revolutionary War. And, there you have it. That's it in a nutshell. And people are usually interested after that. They weren't expecting that to come out of my mouth. So then they kind of lean in. And then you can kind of start talking to them, engage them. But I think that, people are kind of up here hitting on the importance of conventions. But I think it really is important because as an independent creator, you aren't with a big company who's working for you. And so you really do have to use this community that assembles at these conventions all over the country, different places and times, and start being able to rely on them so that you're not isolated. So I just think networking is a really huge thing. So I think that by nature, most creators are introverted and insecure. We don't like to, we don't think that our work is good enough for the most part, and we, have a hard time talking to other people about it. And really all I can say is you just have to get over it. You have to get over it, and you have to be able to be confident and cheerful and, optimistic about your own project, or no one else is going to want to, look at it. If I walk through Artist Alley and you're sitting there and you look sad and depressed and you look like no one's bought a book all day, I'm not going to come talk to you. I'm going to put my head down, walk really fast and get past you before you try to engage me, so that I have to stand there and it's awkward. So you want to be the kind of person that's inviting and that you're spreading the word on it, stuff like that. So I think that kind of stuff is important at any job, but especially when you're creating your own business all on your own.
And to add to something that everybody's touched on a little bit, another thing, if you're serious about becoming an independent creator, you have to have a marketing mindset. And you have to understand, and like what she was saying, stepping outside of yourself, you have to understand that nobody's going to sell your book for you. And she said that, we're not working for big corporations that have all this money behind them to put your book out there and advertising and all this stuff. And I'm not talking about spending thousands of dollars like Eric kind of touched on, but you do have to be out there and get people to know you and your book and what you're all about. I like what freestyle comics who are out there say about themselves. They call themselves the masters of self-promotion. And that's really what you have to be. You cannot just sit here and just hope that your book does great. You have to really push it in any way you can, think outside the box, come up with ideas nobody else has done, just to get people to notice you in your book.
Although, to bring it full circle, back to the work again, if you're not producing the best product you can produce, all the marketing and advertising and networking in the world is not going to make people care about your book if it's not any good. So if you can't produce a great product, then you can get people to the table. You can get people to pick it up. And you can get people interested in your pitch. But they have to be able to open it up and be interested by what they see.
They better be Zaz.
So it's not, every piece of this foundation is equally important. And if any one piece falls apart, then the whole house can crumble. You know, there's no one thing that's going to do it all for you. And there's no one thing that you can sort of do without. You have to do all of it. And that's why independent comics are so difficult to get into and difficult to stay into, and why you'll see so many people come and go over the years. No matter how good the concept, no matter how excited they might seem, the more conventions you do, you see them come and you see them go. And they do a few issues and they have a neat idea and you love what they're doing, and then one day you're like, oh, whatever happened to them, where'd they go? It's hard. It is not easy, and not a lot of people can do it. And thankfully that digital revolution is coming. That is making it a lot easier. The things that we do now, we couldn't have done even 4 or 5 years ago. So in another 4 or 5 years, God only knows what it's going to look like out there. But you have to, every piece of that foundation has to be strong.
And just to kind of play on that, a good measuring stick for when you do start to create those comics of yours, and because as a creator, you're not sure if it's good or not, just like Laura said, we're all a little insecure about our stuff. So make sure you do at least 2 issues. Because if someone buys the first issue and that same person comes back and buys the second issue, you might have something going there.
Well, that's a really good segue. What do you guys think, and I'll just open this up to anybody who wants to chime in, what do you guys think about the current state of Indian small press? I mean, I gave my little speech at the beginning about what I think, but what are your opinions as someone who's doing this, or creating it? Are we in good shape? Are we in bad shape? How's the world?
What comics?
All comics.
I'll just
web comics, you name it.
I'll just say Space last year was the best one we ever had, which that was only in April. We're in the middle of this recession, which surprised me. I was, figuring this was the last one. Nobody's going to show up, and the year before was pretty bad, but the last one was terrific. So I don't know if there's some.
We're cheap entertainment.
Right.
Cheap entertainment.
I don't want to use language that is too grandiose or speak in hyperbole, but I genuinely believe, looking at the state of comics as a whole, that small press and independent and basically everything outside the mainstream, that is the only thing left that has the power to save comics as an art form, as a medium, as a business, forever. Period.
Disney?
Disney schmizney. Because they can just make movies and be cool with that. They don't need the comics. They can do little web things and be cool with that. They don't need the comics. They need the characters, and they need the intellectual
Licensing.
property, and they need the merchandising, and they need, the trademarks. They don't need the comics.
If you've thought that Superman and Batman have been anything other than licenses to make underoos for the last I don't know how many years, then I don't know where you've actually had your head in.
That's why I have the problem with that term small press, because Superman sells 100,000, a million maybe.
Yeah.
Which is most local newspapers sell more than Superman.
Yeah.
Right?
So
And everybody talks about the death of the newspaper, and newspapers are doing much better than comics.
Which is a great segue for me to say web comics.
Yes.
No, really, I really believe that the future of comics is moving that way. I'm not going to re-steer the direction of the whole panel, but I think that there's a merging that's happening. And so I think that a great way to get your stuff, especially if budget is an issue, you don't have money. Don't be fooled. If you're starting independent comics and you're talking about conventions, you can do the ones in your hometown pretty cheap, or the town your mom lives in. But if you're going to buy a table out of city, out of state, then you have to pay for gas, hotel, food, printing, the friend that you drug along, his pass and his food all weekend. They're not going to want to share gas with you. And so it gets really expensive. But when you do web, the amount of people that you have an opportunity to put your story in front of is immense.
It's a constant online convention.
Well, yeah, and it's also people who, my book is 14-year-old girls who don't care about comic books, and 50-year-old guys who dress up in uniforms on the weekend and go to reenacting events. There's a big gap on the guy, the person who reads my comic book. Neither one of those people are at this convention, but they're out there on the internet, and I reach them very easily there. So I think it will be moving. I mean, because, I started on the web, and the number one question that people were constantly asking me is, when are we going to see the Dreamer in print? And it really astounded me, because I thought, you're reading it for free. Crap. I mean, you have a laptop, you can read anywhere, anytime, as many times as you want, and I'm not even charging you anything. I get like, a penny for your page view click on my ad revenue, and that's about it. I didn't think people would want it, but it's just been overwhelming how many people, once they find a story that they love, they want to have it in print, and they really are, open to supporting you. And so I think that we're going to see that working together even more.
And even Comics for Pay online, we started off putting the comic out, not just in the paper, print on demand, which is really the way any small press person wants to go. We'll get into that later. But then the other thing we did is we released our comics for 99 cents an issue. So you could download it on a CDZ or PDF for 99 cents through a place called Payloads. And then as we were doing that, other places like Drive Through Comics and Comics XP started coming out, and they would distribute our comics as well. So it's not just saying, oh, well, I'm stuck either, having to print 4,000 issues of, number one, or nothing at all. You have an amazing amount of venues to put your stuff out on. You just need to find them.
And when people talk about webcomic, it's not just like web strips.
Right.
It's not as small as that anymore. It's a very broad.
Right.
The
Ours
difficulty.
is a full-size comic.
Right. The difficulty
It's
with
28 pages.
the label of webcomics is because it's been so associated with the strips that when we say it's available on the web, people assume it's just a strip. But no, you can get a 36-page full-color comic for free from our website, and then subsequent issues for 99 cents. It's a whole comic. It just happens to be available online.
And with readers, like those little EPCs, if you guys have seen them, Dell has the commercials with the stuff that looks like candy, lollipop, whatever. When you open those up, you can just read it like a comic, clicking from page to page. Also, you have newer ones coming out. When you open it up, you don't have a keyboard on the other side, you have another screen. What's that? You're reading a comic. So paper, the idea of paper is a great thing right now, but I guarantee you, in a few years, especially as this next generation really comes into its own, which doesn't give a crap about paper, you won't really be needing to print most of your stuff because it's going to be a whole new world.
And it could be the solution to trade waiting. I mean, one of the hardest things you have as an independent creator, and we went through this a lot when we were starting to put out issues, is everybody's like, oh, this looks really cool, I'll get it in the trade. And we're like, but there won't be a trade if you don't support us now. People just want the trade, and they won't, a lot of people just won't get the issues. But if you provide them a digital way to cheaply keep up with the book as it goes along, they will download the issues at 99. I mean, thanks to iTunes, 99 cents might as well be free anymore. People don't even think about that. They just click and go. And they can keep up with the series that way, and then they'll order your trades when they come out to collect the series. So everything can work hand in hand, and it all should work hand in hand. The more symbiotic you can build your web presence to be, the stronger it's going to be, and the more odds you are to hit a lot of different kinds of people.
And the bigger your web presence is, the better you're going to do at cons because people will have seen you and they're looking for you.
I think there's no question that the future of comics, mainstream or small press, is going to be digital. I don't think I need to convince anyone in this room that that's the case. I'm sure there's going to be the sticklers that will always do some print stuff, and so there will always be space for that reason. But I think what hasn't happened yet, or what we're starting to see, is that it's really emerging of formats. Now, this book, I mean, it's vertical when we have computer screens that are horizontal. And I think that we're waiting for that one product to come out, which is probably going to come out in the next 12 months. That is your handheld comic reader. The way we've got our, just like iTunes has created iPods and completely almost eliminated the CD or any kind of tangible music you buy. You buy almost everything digitally now, or you don't buy it, you just download it. And I think that's eventually, 5 years from now, we're going to see that with comics, where the amount of print comics you find in stores are going to be much more limited, and that's sad, and perhaps I'm not going to be popular for saying that. But I think we're going to see more and more of the popular titles, the Batmans, the Supermans. I'm very concerned that we're going to see less small press as the years go on.
I think it's already happening with Diamond changing the numbers.
I agree.
It's just like even less titles they'll even carry anymore, so.
At the same time, that's why I say that small press will save comics, or can save comics, or is the only force that can save comics. Because the less of us there are doing these different things, doing things in different ways from Marvel and DC and even, Image and Dark Horse to a lesser degree, the fewer of us there are, the more of a monopoly they have. The more of a monopoly they have, the less effort they have to put in. And I'm probably not alone instead sitting in this room and saying that I've picked up many a comic in the last many years that felt like everybody from the editor on down has been phoning it in and relying on the fact that we're going to keep buying certain characters just because we've always bought certain characters, and we're not thinking about whether we enjoy the comic anymore, we just are doing it by reflex. People are going to stop developing that reflex. People are going to stop buying just because. And if there isn't another option, if there aren't people providing another way, then that monopoly is going to get stronger and they will strangle themselves to death. The history of comics is a wide mass media genre slowly turning itself into a niche market. What we have to do as the outsiders with the internet, which is making it possible at very little cost to you to provide your work to an almost limitless audience, what we have to do is open that niche up again and show them that there is more out there than the comics they're reading. The reason manga has been so successful is because the Japanese consider comics just another way of telling a story. You can get crime manga, you can get mystery manga, you can get fantasy manga, romance, whatever. It's just comics telling stories. We need to do that. We need to do more of that. And if somebody doesn't, if we don't, they're not going to do it for us. No monopoly is a good thing. And even though, DC has their guys, Marvel has theirs, they're shaking their hands behind the scenes. Because as long as they run everything together, they get to split it all amongst each other. And the less anybody else is making them work harder for their audience, the less work they're going to put into their audience, and the smaller that audience is going to get.
Let me quick say too, here's the thing to think about. There's an apathy for regular comics, and this apathy has only grown more frustrated and angry because of the price hike that's happening. So comics are now, instead of $2.99, which was really expensive for a comic that takes you about 6 minutes to read, $3.99. And you know what? Most of your independent stuff, you can sell it for about that same price. And when you've got your independent stuff and your big stream stuff at the exact same price, and if you can make your independent stuff better than theirs, and you can, then that is much easier for your average person to be like, you know what, I feel like jumping ship. I'm going to go somewhere else.
We're cutting out the middleman
Exactly.
and the independent press. Like this is $3.50 for a 76-page book, and you can't get a Marvel for just under $4 now. So.
I remember 35 cents. That's where I started. So
I hate to say it, I remember 12.
Yeah, there you go. Starting with Eric, going down the line, pretty much my last question, and we'll open it up to some questions from the audience. But do you, as an independent creator, are you satisfied with where you are? Do you consider yourself successful? And where would you feel successful if you are or not?
Right now, no. I feel like I've not gotten where I want to be, but I feel like I'm on the road to get there. I feel like I'll be successful when this becomes a full-time gig for me. And it's been a very slow road getting there, because being a one-man show, which I am, I write, draw, promote, self-publish. There's not enough hours in the day. Even if I didn't have full-time, I would really get that stuff done now. So I have to spend the time kind of building up that audience and building up my catalog of work I've done in order to plan for the future. Where I want to be and be able to have a book out there that's producing money for me, so I can start on the next book. I think that that might even be an impossible goal. Not to say that it can't be done, but it's So I shouldn't say impossible. I think it's a very difficult goal because it's so hard to, I mean, anybody knows it's so hard to get do comics full time, especially if they're your own and you're not drawing for a larger publisher. I'm starting to look at turning my comics into a brand where I actually start selling merchandise based on my comics, which is something I don't really want to do because I don't want to be just another one of the companies that just markets products, but I think that's the way I'm going to have to go if I want to be able to make enough money to support myself full time doing this.
I'm absolutely not where I want to be right now, no. Like you, I would consider successful being able to do my own projects full time and make a living at it. I'm a little different where I do make a living doing everything I do comic related, no pun intended. But I'm spread so thin because I'm over a vast area of different things that I'm doing that it's hard for me to focus completely on one thing where I'm happy with it. You know, lettering is something I fell into, it pays the bills, it's not what I want to do for the rest of my life. Haven, even though, you know, it's a great idea, it's something I enjoy doing, it's not what I want to do for the rest of my life. I want to create my own stuff. And until I'm doing that and I can make a living on that, I don't feel successful now.
And for anybody who doesn't know, Haven is an independent comic catalog, much like Diamond, only they specialize in indie and small press.
Absolutely.
So it's definitely a catalog you might want to talk to Brant about if your local store isn't carrying it, because it's a big, diverse selection of titles in. Sorry.
I don't know, this could get really repetitive if we all say no. But I think the common thread is going to be that we all want to do this full time. That being said, I've had an insane amount of luck and success in my project. So I'm pretty happy about that. You know, I would love to be able to do this full time, and not only that, but have my husband on board too, as the second member of the team, which he is now, but he just has to do it on top of already working like 60 hours a week at his real job. So I guess, you know, of course, financial independence, I think, is what all of us sort of are hoping for in this. But that being said, I mean, if you count success in, you know, having a beautiful book out I'm proud of and acclaim in the industry, then like, I'm pretty happy with that. And I have great readers. I mean, I have an online community that's just so much fun. They send me birthday presents, and I mean, it's just the most insane, ridiculous community. They like have crushes on founding fathers and argue about like which one of them was the hottest. Alexander Hamilton and Thomas Jefferson are usually in the lead, but then you get like really weird people sometimes who are in like Louis the 15th. Like, okay, why not? So I think that like it is. I mean, on the note of success, it's easy to get discouraged if you're looking at the final line of finances. And so I think that as an independent creator, you really do have to start, I'm not there, but I'm moving there, and to being able to redefine success in other ways, because if not, I think it just can become really depressing and really hopeless if really the only thing you're looking for is to become Jeff Smith, and there's like how many of him out there. Really to just maybe set smaller, more realistic goals and realize that like that having like your own small studio or complete financial independence, it's not going to happen right away, and it might not happen at all. So how is it that you can turn this project into something that you're content with, not just content with, but fulfilled through in order to keep going, because there's only so long you can just continue to beat up on yourself that you aren't that one, two guys in the whole industry that is able to make that happen.
Before you start, Bob, I'd actually like to add, since you said all that, yeah, sorry.
You've influenced him.
I would say that I have a measure of success because I've worked the office jobs 9 to 5 and everything, and I absolutely hate it with a passion. I was never happy there. So I will say that if you are absolutely happy with what you're doing, that is success.
Okay, I actually have the advantage of being on the other side from where most of you people are now, so that's, and honestly, I made that decision years ago that I wasn't going to do this as a living. I do have a very challenging, interesting job that I do, 60 hours a week, plus the comics, so I was always happy just to make, just do this on the side and have some fun with it. And as it turns out, I think I've been able to help some other people along with it. I've been part of, doing the space thing, doing no comics. I work with the CCAD Explorer Post doing comics on Saturdays, so that kind of keeps me going. So, and I recently became an empty nester. My daughter moved to Pennsylvania. She used to be here with me to help out with the conventions. So, I'm going to have more time to devote to, basically it's a hobby for me. So, but we are serious about space and doing what we can to help the individual creator.
I don't know, I'm happy. We live like ultra cheap. We don't have health care or any of those things. Yeah, you think you're gonna have health care, you think it's that. But this is our job, and that's it. We make the uniques, we go to cons, we sell prints, we do sketches, and through all of that together, we make enough money to live. We moved to a place that would be cheaper for us to live because we wanted to make sure that this was full-time. We used to do teaching on the side. We don't anymore because we wanted to do more comics. So you gotta suck it up and live frugally, or, you can sort of nickel and dime it, out and build your comics up, and then hopefully eventually get to the point where you're really super financially solvent. And I guess the real thing is for everybody here is, how cheap do you want to live? Where are you willing to go? Like, do you have to have 1.2 kids and a pool and a white picket fence and all that kind of stuff? Because if you do, this isn't your job. Forget it right now. But but if you, just want to live in a somewhat cheap apartment and you you make it by on enough food, enough rent, and having a little bit of savings and calling it a day, that's good. I mean, there's a reason we do this 20 cons a year, because this makes us money. I wouldn't do these cons if it didn't make us money, but I did have to work really hard to find that formula to make it profitable for us to go to every con. So I'm happy. If this was the rest of our life, I'd be pleased as punch.
I'm satisfied with the progress we've made, and I'm incredibly happy with the speed at which we've made that progress. We've been running the con circuit for at least 7 years, but we only just started releasing the uniques a year ago last March. And within that time, we've gone from people nobody really knew to being on the ladder. I wouldn't say we're moving up the ladder, but I think we're on it now. So there's the prospect of being able to grab another rung at some point. And I feel incredibly fortunate for that. I feel incredibly fortunate that I'm able to make comics and go to conventions and meet people who like the comics that I'm making. Some people are into comic art because they like drawing nice pictures and they like making the art, and they like, that the art is what drives them. And some people are in comics because they want to tell a story. And I'm a storyteller. And I'm only really happy with what I'm doing if other people are reading and enjoying the stories that I'm making. And I feel like that's happening. And that makes me incredibly happy. And like the girl said, we live real frugal. But I don't miss anything. There's a lot of things I've had to give up, but I don't miss any of it. I spend every day of my life waking up and working with my wife to make a comic that I love. And I could not imagine anything better than that, with the possible exception of financial security. That's it. That's all I want. I don't ask for much.
We're good enough.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm just having a hell of a lot of fun making comics, man. That's the bottom line. I mean, this stuff, it sounds like, I guess if I were in the audience, I'd be thinking, wow, do I really want to do this? And that's good, but yeah, you really want to do it. If that's what you want to do, I mean, right now, man, I just want to break even and have a hell of a lot of fun. And so far, that's been going good for me.
Yeah, I'm working 24/7 in comics, and I don't even make comics. And well, yeah, actually, I guess technically I do now. It's infectious. It just happens. But I do it, and I want to add to what Dustin's saying. I do it because of the community. I found friends. I found people that I would, jump in front of a train for almost. It's just there's a community in comics, and there's a brotherhood in something that we love that is worth doing it. Even if it's painful, even if you have to work every day, there's a lot of benefits beyond the financial benefits in this that are
And
there.
when you do get that comic book made, you could do a lot worse than putting it in the hands of Chuck Norris. A lot worse.
Do we have any questions for the wonderful panel? Anybody? Go for it.
So you mentioned, you guys all seem to talk about comics being released more in the digital format in the future. Do you think that there's going to be like a Kindle for comics?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Within 6 months, I think there will be.
Yeah.
That's going to be so easy to get a hold of.
And then when they break the color barrier on digital ink, all publishing is going digital. You'll still have some, within our lifetimes, paper might even become a novelty. It's possible, because most of the time when we talk with people that we talk to, older professionals about, the digital revolution that's coming and all the things that we're doing, they just shake their heads and but I just like to hold it in my hand.
I was like,
But the 14-year-old doesn't.
Yeah.
The 14-year-old likes to see the blue light of their
They don't
computer.
care.
So.
The thing is at the age, the way they're coming up, and I'd put it at 25 and under, they have grown up in such a way that what they're concerned with is content, period.
I don't know, as somebody who does a little bit of printmaking, that absolutely terrifies me.
And that's
Well,
understandable.
you know what?
As
I know
people-
Billy there. There's always going to be a place for that, because I think besides all the comic, this is what comics are, there's still going to be that section over here that does, I don't know if you want to call it art. I don't want to claim that that's what I do, but I've done some print making, a lot with some linoleum cut things. They sell well because it's texture, something that's textural. People enjoy that because it's handmade. So there's always going to be some type of market for that. So I've been working on that, and I'm working towards the web comic stuff too. So and there's going to be some way to bring those two together.
I'm the eternal optimist. I think that the revolution we're going to see is going to actually help print eventually. I think it's going to foster new markets for print, because you've seen, it's been leaked to the internet just within the last couple weeks. Eric posted it on the comic related forums and kind of shared it with us, but there is a PC, essentially a 2-page open and close full page PC reader that is being hyped right now as possibly coming.
It's called the Microsoft Courier.
Courier, that's it. But I mean, if you take the concept of the ability to go out there Wi-Fi at your local Starbucks, and you're reading your comic and it references another one, and you can click on that link and download it for 99 cents, that's hard to fight. That's hard to fight the sexiness of having a whole long box in your hand. But
And more than the fact that this product is coming, I know for a fact Comics XP is researching how to get comics in this thing immediately, so it's going to happen right away.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of things coming, but I think at the same time it's not going to kill. Everybody's so worried that one's going to destroy the other, and I really think that much like what's going on in the music revolution and what's evolving in magazines versus web pages and different things, it's going to allow diversification, specification, increase the type of stories you want to see, and also I think it's still going to help that print market in the long run. I think it opens us up to a wider audience, and maybe we can take advantage of that and forge some new frontiers and get some new readers. Any other questions? Please.
For the folks that still have regular full-time job, on top of your weekly hours, about how much time do you spend working on the comic?
Well, for me, I'm really lucky. I've always known I wanted to write, and making $1 million I really don't care about. If I did, I wouldn't be doing a comic, right? If I would make it. So I set up my job purposely. I found a job that allowed me to write. I work 3 12-hour shifts. Like they said, you got to sacrifice. I gave up my parties on weekends, and I gave up my friendships on weekends. I work 3/12 Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and then Tuesday through Friday, I'm completely off to create whatever I want to create. So, ask yourself, how serious are you? Are you willing to make that big of a change to give yourself time to create?
I had a question in the front.
Yeah, a question about the big two, big three, whatever. Do you think that DC is doing the right thing with Zuda? Do you think that with their new Impreza is doing with Zuda Comics and having people do competitions online and switch up the format to being landscape versus vertical?
I think a lot of people are pissed about the fact that if you do that for Zuda, then they completely own your property.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what it's about, because comics in a lot of ways have become to the point of it. They're like, well, comics are nice, but I really want a movie, because, they
It's
want
all
to
about
sell
the
it.
IP.
So the thing is, DC is doing that, but for DC, it's great, because they've got all these things that are there now for Warner Brothers to just pick from. So it's nice, but it's not.
To be fair, they overpay you for making a webcomic though, so the people who enter, I think, for them, it's a good deal. I think the page viewer loads too slow. Honestly, I've been to Zuda so many times, and I cannot make it even like 10 pages into a comic because it loads too slow, and I just give up, and I'm impatient. So I think they could refine it, but I don't know, it's another avenue for creativity, and the competition idea is kind of fun, I guess. I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer to it, it's just...
DC has, I don't know if it's going to be different now that Warner Brothers has kind of embraced them a little tighter, but DC's always been a little rocky on their marketing side, and I think it was a good idea that they didn't get behind enough. It felt like an afterthought a lot as they did it, and I think they could have done a lot more marketing for it to help some of the creators that were coming through it. It's a good exposure.
I think that you're talking about format and the horizontal format, and I think that when they started, I think it's been 2 years now, I think that was a brilliant idea to try to change the format of comics. But now I'm thinking it's flipped the other way, where they need to look at the format, because now with these new tablets that I've been seeing prototypes for, it's flipping the other way, where they're trying to turn computers into a vertical format to match the comics that already exist.
Apart from Zuda, I don't know of any long format web comics that have a wide format. I mean, all of them that I read are set up like this because I still think print and web are going to be married for a long time.
Yeah.
So I'm actually excited to hear that technology is embracing that, because people kept thinking the shape of comics would change. It hasn't happened. So.
Any other questions? Well, in closing, I'd like to encourage you, these people who are sitting on this panel gave up like the last hour of a con when they could be still selling their books. So please consider going to their booths and supporting independent and small press and picking up a copy, because there's some incredible stories here, as well as Studio Kamikaze, Penny Dreadful Press. There's a few others here that I highly encourage you to go visit their booths, because there's some great, great creators. And certainly I will not forget Chad right here. So thank you, everyone. And thank you for joining us. And if you can give a round of applause for our creators.
While I can talk to you all right now, I will give each of you a free copy of Lackluster World #1 if you want to walk up here and get it. So,